You have been fed a comforting lie about time. Society insists that time heals all wounds, suggesting that distance from a painful event guarantees peace. But if you place a functional MRI scanner over the brain of someone who survived a catastrophic car crash, an abusive childhood, or a combat zone, you will not find a healed wound decades later. You will find an active, blazing alarm system. The threat belongs to the past, but the neurology screams that the danger is happening right now. Bessel van der Kolk spent decades studying this phenomenon, discovering that trauma does not reside in the rational mind. Trauma embeds itself in the tissues, muscles, and neural pathways of the physical form. To heal, we must stop trying to talk our way out of a physiological trap. Module 1. The myth of logic. When crisis strikes, our default cultural response involves sitting in a room and talking. We expect profound conversations and rational processing to resolve internal anguish. A patient sits across from a professional, recounts a tragic event, and attempts to weave the horror into a coherent narrative. The assumption dictates that if we understand why we hurt, the pain will evaporate. This approach ignores the fundamental architecture of the human brain. The brain operates in distinct regions, and trauma fractures the communication between them. When a person experiences overwhelming terror, the left hemisphere of the brain, the center for logic, language, and linear time, shuts down. A specific region called Broca's area goes dark. This is not a metaphor. Scans show the blood flow leaving the language center entirely. At the same time, the right hemisphere, the emotional, sensory, and visual center, lights up like a bonfire. The brain stops recording a continuous story with a beginning, middle, and end. Instead, it captures fragmented sensory details: the smell of burning rubber, the sharp crack of shattering glass, the color of a specific shirt. Herein lies the agonizing tension. We demand that survivors use language to cure a wound that destroyed their capacity for language. Research from the World Health Organization analyzing epidemiological data across 24 countries reveals that over 70% of people experience lifetime traumas, with individuals averaging more than 3 distinct traumatic exposures. This means the vast majority of human beings walk around carrying sensory fragments they cannot articulate. When asked to describe their feelings, the survivor experiences a physical barrier. The throat tightens, the tongue turns to lead, and the mind goes blank. They cannot find the words, because at the moment of terror, the words cease to exist. Relying on logic to soothe a hyperactive amygdala, the brain's fear center, proves futile. The rational brain, located in the prefrontal cortex, cannot persuade the primitive brain that the threat has passed. You cannot argue with a pounding heart. The solution requires abandoning the expectation that cognitive understanding equals physiological resolution. We must embrace therapies that bypass the intellect. We have to communicate with the primitive brain using its native language, sensation, rhythm, and movement. We must help the individual experience physical safety in the present moment, rather than forcing them to recount the horrors of the past. But if language cannot reach the hidden corners of human suffering, where do these fragmented memories hide? The answer lies outside the skull. Module 2. The Biological Archive. Consider the human nervous system as an exquisite surveillance machine. Under normal conditions, it scans the environment, registers safety, and allows the body to rest, digest food, and repair tissue. However, when the system detects an inescapable threat, it alters the entire physiological landscape. The mind might eventually forget the specifics of a tragic event, but the body archives the data. The vagus nerve, a massive information highway connecting the brainstem to the heart, lungs, and gut, carries the emotional residue of the past into the organs. A person might believe they have moved on, yet their physical form tells a different story. The shoulders remain hiked up near the ears, acting as perpetual armor against an invisible blow. The jaw clenches throughout the night, grinding teeth into flat surfaces. The breathing remains trapped in the upper chest, shallow and rapid, signaling to the brain that a predator waits nearby. The tension manifests in staggering public health statistics. A sweeping study by the National Institutes of Health examining older adults demonstrated that those with a history of post-traumatic stress disorder face elevated rates of numerous chronic ailments. Compared to non-traumatized peers, individuals with lifetime PTSD exhibit odds ratios up to 1.8 times higher for developing hypertension, angina pectoris, tachycardia, stomach ulcers, gastritis, and arthritis. Their bodies endure a perpetual state of inflammation. The adrenal glands pump cortisol and adrenaline into the bloodstream, preparing muscles to fight an enemy that no longer exists. Over time, this toxic chemical wash corrodes the cardiovascular system, disrupts the gastrointestinal tract, and triggers autoimmune responses. We try to treat the stomach ulcer with antacids. We try to treat the tension headaches with painkillers. We try to manage the high blood pressure with beta blockers. Yet, the root cause remains untouched. The body is screaming a story that the mind refuses to acknowledge. The definitive solution involves rebuilding interoception. Interoception is the capacity to notice and tolerate internal sensations. Survivors of chronic stress often view their own bodies as the enemy. The heart pounding feels like a heart attack. A flutter in the stomach feels like impending doom. Therapy must guide the individual to map their internal landscape without judgment. By placing a hand on the chest and noticing the rhythm of the heart, or directing attention to the sensation of the feet resting on the floor, the individual begins to befriend their physical form. They learn that a sensation is just a sensation, not an emergency. Understanding that the body harbors the past provides a map. But how do we convince a guarded, armored nervous system to lay down its weapons? Module 3. The paralysis of numbing. When the pain of existence becomes intolerable, the human organism deploys its most extreme defense mechanism, dissociation. If you cannot fight the predator and you cannot flee the danger, the nervous system initiates the dorsal vagal shutdown. The body collapses, the heart rate drops, and the mind uncouples from reality. This survival tactic preserves the core self during inescapable abuse, but it demands a devastating toll in the aftermath. You cannot selectively numb human emotion. When you deaden the capacity to feel terror, rage, and despair, you simultaneously eradicate the capacity to feel joy, connection, and love. The physical manifestation of this numbing is absolute emptiness. A mother holds her newborn infant, but she registers no warmth, sensing a pane of thick glass separating her from the child. A combat veteran sits in a crowded room of celebrating friends, staring blankly at the wall, feeling a profound absence of internal life. Their faces lack muscle tone, their voices sound flat, and their eyes project a vacant 1,000-yard stare. This epidemic of detachment weaves through modern society. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reports that 3 in 4 high school students have experienced at least one adverse childhood experience, such as emotional abuse, physical neglect, or living in a household plagued by substance issues. Millions of individuals learn to sever the connection between their mind and their body before they reach adulthood, navigating the world as floating intellects devoid of physical sensation. The cure for profound dissociation is not cognitive behavioral therapy. You cannot think your way back into a numb body. The solution requires structured, rhythmic movement. Kolk discovered that practices like trauma-sensitive yoga, martial arts, and even community theatre offer miraculous results for detached individuals. Yoga forces the brain to synchronize with physical sensation. When a person holds a pose, they must breathe through mild discomfort. They notice the stretch in their hamstring. They feel the expansion of their ribs. This deliberate attention to movement and breath acts as a physical reset button for the nervous system. Furthermore, moving in unison with other people, whether in a choir, a theatre troupe, or a martial arts class, rebuilds the social engagement system. The body learns to mirror the calm, regulated nervous systems of the people around it. Rhythmic movement shifts the individual out of the freeze response and restores the vital flow of energy throughout the limbs. Movement grounds the nervous system in the present moment. Yet, an integrated body still faces a formidable obstacle: the visual loops of terror playing on repeat inside the mind. Module 4. Rewiring the alarm. For someone burdened by severe traumatic imprints, the past refuses to stay in the past. It invades the present through relentless flashbacks. A flashback is not a simple memory. It is a full-body hijacking. A specific trigger, the smell of diesel fuel, a sudden loud noise, a particular tone of voice, bypasses the logical brain and strikes the amygdala. In a fraction of a second, the visual cortex floods with terrifying images. Sweat coats the palms. The visual field narrows into a tunnel. The ears ring. The individual experiences the sheer terror of the original event, as if it is unfolding right in front of them. Their brain treats the memory as a current, life-threatening emergency. The hippocampus, the part of the brain responsible for placing memories on a timeline and stamping them with a date in the past, fails to function. Traditional psychiatry attempts to suppress this alarm system using heavy medication. While pharmaceuticals can dampen the intensity of the panic, they do not resolve the underlying neural dysfunction. The memories remain unarchived, hovering just below the surface, waiting for the next trigger. The payoff emerges through unconventional, brain-altering therapies like EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, and neurofeedback. EMDR asks the patient to hold a distressing image in their mind while simultaneously tracking the therapist's finger moving side to side. This bilateral stimulation forces the brain to process information across both hemispheres. It mimics the rapid eye movement of REM sleep, the exact phase of sleep where the brain digests daily experiences and stores them in long-term memory. Studies reveal that EMDR demonstrates a greater impact on PTSD score reduction than selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors like Prozac. The patient still remembers the tragic event, but the memory loses its visceral sting. The images blur. The heart rate remains steady. The brain finally recognizes that the event belongs to history. Neurofeedback offers another profound tool. By placing electrodes on the scalp and projecting the patient's brainwaves onto a screen, individuals can watch their own neural activity in real time. Through simple games controlled by their brainwaves, they train their hyperactive neural networks to find calmer, more regulated patterns. They learn to voluntarily quiet the storm inside their skull. These interventions prove that the brain possesses remarkable plasticity. We are not doomed to live forever in the shadow of our worst days. We have the technology to rewire the broken alarm. Your brain does not just record the past, it predicts your future. To discover how your internal predictions dictate your physical reality and how to rewrite those mental blueprints, click the video on your screen for our breakdown of the expectation effect by David Robson. Your brain and body hold the map to your past, but they also continuously construct your future.